Hello, and today we're going to be looking at ethical and legal considerations for researchers when they're conducting experiments. So, first off, we're going to start off with the definition of ethical and legal. Now, ethical is mainly based on morals of doing the right and wrong things to others. It is defined as something that is correct, like what should be done in certain situations. Whereas legal, on the other hand, is what has to be done and is based on the law. And if failure to do these things or follow these rules could result in law, prison fines, or anything of that sort. Now, there are a couple things that happen in history that make up ethical and legal considerations. Now, back in the World War, the Nazis, that was run by Hitler, they would use the enemy to experiment on different tactics or find out what conditions their soldiers would die at if they were put under certain conditions. So what they did is that without asking any consent or without anyone agreeing to these experiments, they would take the enemy and put them and basically torture them until they died. For example, they put them into cold conditions to see if their soldiers would die at certain conditions. And obviously, for the person, the participant, that would cause physical, and if they did survive, a lot of emotional harm in the long run. They did this without any sort of consent and against their will completely, which is the unethical thing to do. Another person that did something similar, but not really that similar, was Zimbardo and Milgram. So now these people have accepted to take part in this research and this test, but it was still unethical for various reasons. So what they had to do for the Zimbardo experiment is that he took random people, well, college students mainly, that were quite innocent and normal, and put them in a setting where some were authoritative figures, so they were the prison wardens, and some were prisoners. Now, all these people were quite normal, never had any problems before, no prison sentences before, and when they got put in confinement, they changed just to see how they would react and how they would change. They became more prison-like, or what we would think as prison-like, became more thuggish and aggressive and disrespectful to authority. And the authority, the normal people became also, the prison wardens also became more strict and what they probably would expect a prison to be like. So they created that with their imaginations alone because they had no previous experiences in prison. Now, Milgram, on the other hand, was slightly different. He was testing obedience given to like obedience and how people would react or if they would follow what an authoritative figure said and just copy what or do what they were supposed to do. So what he did is he led an experiment where one person, the participant, would have to ask another self-recorded participant what question, like what was the answer to particular questions, and if the participant got it wrong, the other person, they would press a button that would shock them. Now in this experiment, this is unethical because they were deceived. So they obviously, at the time, they thought that they were actually shocking an actual person, whereas they were actually just shocking nothing, and it was pre-recorded. And it was a test to see how far someone will go causing harm on another human being. Now, Bases, after all of this, Bases created a code of conduct for research, um, and this is the researcher's responsibility to follow this code of conduct, and it's basically made up of different rules, and they all are to do with making sure that everything is ethical and legally right. And that was created in 1974. Now, what we're going to do is that I'm going to explain four different scenarios, and I will pick out and evaluate what could go wrong or possibly went wrong or what went right in these experiments. So the first one is the effect of using a warm-up before a routine in junior cheerleading in comparison to no warm-up. Now, this researcher, he before he did this experiment, he made sure that he was DBS and CRB checked. This check is required because, of course, there are younger children. It says junior, and if you want to deal with children, you have to have this check to make sure you have no previous offenses to do with younger people so that they are safe as possible. So he did that. But what he could do is, because they are not doing a warm up, there's a higher risk. It's proven already. He did not research properly. It's proven already that physical harm can be caused without doing a proper warm up. So they might pull a muscle. They might not be able to do techniques correctly, and this could be physically harmful to them. Also, what he should do is make sure that they understand and they know this will be part of the informed consent, and they agree voluntarily to do this experiment, and that they have a right to withdraw. This is very important because they need to know that if they need to leave, if they want to leave, or if they can't handle it anymore, that they have that right to withdraw. He should also, if let's say he did not do this right to withdraw, he might have been holding them against their will, and there is a possibility that if he caused physical harm, held them against their will, did not inform them correctly, that he could go to prison and have to face tribunal, and he could possibly be fined or get a prison sentence. And of course, in turn, that will affect his credibility and his BACES accreditation. So he will become a less credible researcher and possibly even lose his BACES accreditation. The next scenario is the effect of different altitudes on the player's aerobic performance. Now, this is a difficult one, as in there have been plenty of research going on before. So, as a researcher, his responsibility is to look back at other research and pick out what they did or they didn't do, and understand that if someone got harmed at a certain point, he should know what point to stop at, because this could be very harmful to that person physically if they get put in too high of an altitude that they may not be able to breathe. Also, because this may be a very harmful um, research project, he needs to do a risk benefit analysis, which he did. This is where you make sure that the benefits outweigh the risk. So you're more likely to give a benefit um, for that participant than there is a risk of injury or a risk of anything. It's also very important that they make sure that the data is protected. So data protection is very important because, especially if it's an elite athlete, then will not want to um, they will not want to broadcast what results they got to the other competition or anyone else, for a matter of fact, because they want to be at the top of their level and keep things a secret. Also, when he does this experiment, there's no way that he's allowed to deceive anyone else, that the participant. So he's not allowed to lie about what altitude he's doing it at, because that may affect it, and that's also unethical. And obviously, as like scenario one, they have to be informed consent. They have to consent and be informed of exactly what's going to happen to them. Also, he should go through, before all of this, he should do ethical training to make sure he knows what is right and what is wrong, and always provide a disclaimer, knowing that there's a possibility that person may get hurt or not. Now, scenario three is an effect of performance in the under 12 basketball drills when punishment is given after mistakes. Now, this researcher needs to make sure that what he's doing is voluntary, so everyone actually wants to do it or volunteers to do it, and he's not forcing anyone to do anything. This is a very easy way that the participants may be deceived, because if it's basketball training, they may just assume that's all part of the training. But if it's part of a project, he needs to make sure that they're voluntarily doing it. Because if he doesn't, there's a possibility he may be suspended, um, and that would, of course, be scientific misconduct, and he can lose his basic accreditation as any other thing, all the other scenarios said as well. There's a possibility as well that he may cause emotional harm because, let's say, for example, if he does not treat everyone equally and enforce equality, that if he gives one person a particular punishment and not the other person a particular punishment, that could lead to them being felt like they're not good enough, or the other person is more favored and they may not want to continue playing basketball. That's emotionally harmful. And when they get results as well, it's good to keep it anonymous and not broadcast it to everyone because they're a team or even individuals. They don't want that out to everyone. And because they're under 12s, they definitely need parental consent from the parents as well because they're young. Now, the Institutional Ethics and Review Committee, they would be involved because they need to make sure that they're who put the rules in place for different ethics and legal, yeah, for ethics, and they would review these researchers projects before they do them to make sure that they're ethically correct. Now, the final scenario is children that are endomorphs are slower than children that are ectomorphs. Now, instantly we can see that this can cause emotional harm if they're all in the same environment or same room or same place, because the bigger children will know that more than likely they are not going to win a race against someone that is smaller. That's why if this person were to carry out an experiment, I think it would be better for them to carry out this experiment in a space where it's only the researcher and the participant, and I think that the results should not be released to either them or to the public because, of course, naturally, if you come out of a test or an experiment, they may go and socialize with their friends and they'll ask what they got. And if they know what they got already, then that means that they will be comparing to others and may feel they may be emotionally harmed by this if they didn't do as well as someone else. Of course, because children, once again, uh, and you're dealing with both endomorphs and ectomorphs, you will want to run a health and medical screening questionnaire for them because you need to know if they have any medical issues of any sort so that you can prevent something from happening during the test or after the test. Also, it's good to also do your previous research as your responsibility, as a researcher, to make sure that you're not doing anything that's been done before and proven before. And yes, and then that obviously would include making sure they don't get injured, because if they do get injured, you could possibly be fined for it as well. Thank you for listening, and that was just ethical and legal considerations in research.